If someone has enough of money, the person will not have anxiety around money. If the person is not having enough of it, will have anxiety around money, will have more financial trauma.
What are the reasons that originates financial trauma in an individual?
So that can be growing up in a poor household, struggling with basic necessities. Female group has been found to have more financial trauma because
Dr. Nitasha Pandey is a clinical psychologist and the best-selling author of Let's Talk About the N-Word. Today, she's here to discuss the impact of financial trauma in our financial well-being and how we can overcome it.
How does one get to know that person is going through a financial trauma?
if there is a huge sum of money coming in their bank, how are they feeling about it? Are they comfortable with it? Are they getting jittery? Are they making some impulsive decision? Or the portfolio is going down? How is that person reacting to it? So that will be the first step. And then the second step is for you to...
Is financial therapist equivalent to a financial advisor? Hi Natasha, welcome to Temperament Season 2. The first question, how do you define financial trauma from a psychological perspective?
I'll make it very simple for you, very easy for you. Let's break down the word. Financial trauma. So what exactly is trauma? Trauma is basically an event or a series of events that you have gone through which has caused some shock or a lot of stress in your life and has affected your mental health condition in the long run. So financial trauma is basically if that life event has something to do with finance, and if it is affecting your relationship with money and what you think and feel about money, and it's affecting your mental well-being around money, if that is the case, then that is financial trauma.
You said it's a condition. If it's a condition, it has to be symptoms. So what are the most common symptoms of financial trauma?
Either you might start becoming very anxious around taking any decision related to spending money. You might become very frugal, or that person might indulge in too much of spending, overspending, making less, spending more than what the person is making. Or that person might, become a hoarder, like collecting too many things or asset and is not able to let go of anything. Or it can basically manifest in a way in which the person might have too much anxiety around any decision related to money and might, try to delay it or avoid it as much as possible, leading to maybe complete decision paralysis or something of that severity.
Now, Nitasha, when I say, is financial trauma more common in certain demographics or socio-economic groups, am I right?
Yes, yeah. So
And why?
in general, see, anything can happen to anyone at any point of time. When we talk about psychological trauma or psychological disorder, in general, we say that it can happen to anyone at any point of time. But that is at the same time equally true that there are certain stratas of the society, certain demographic where you'll see more of such cases. So there have been studies, there have been US-based studies in which it has been found that it's more in low socioeconomic status group.
Okay.
Which is quite obvious. If someone has enough of money, the person will not have anxiety around money. If the person is not having enough of it, will have anxiety around money, will have more financial trauma, will be more prone to having financial trauma. In the same way, there was another study in which it was seen that if it was compared between employed group and unemployed group, obviously the unemployed group will have more financial trauma and more anxiety around money. Then the female group has been found to have more financial trauma because we know it's a fact that there are more female who are financially maybe partially dependent or completely dependent on the males, and because that dependency is there and they have to ask another person for money or for financial support or for basic necessities of her life. So obviously that will lead to anxiety and she will have trauma around that.
And that's a very good segue for my next question as well, that from your perspective, how much of our financial behavior is shaped by nature versus nurture? We can nature be, say, genetics or personality, and nurture be it like, the way we grow up, the experiences we face in life.
Okay, so see, it's both will obviously have impact on our financial decision, whether it's nature or nurture. It's basically some of that will be decided by nature and some of that will be decided by nurture. Both will be impacting our overall comfort level with money related decisions. Nature, when we talk about nature, basically it's the traits that we have genetically inherited. Say for example, if there is a person in a family, maybe a grandfather or a great grandfather who had significant financial trauma at some point of time, and that person has significant anxiety, stress around money, that can somehow create genetic changes in the subsequent generation, and that can be carried along from one generation to the other generation, and it can be passed down. So that is how the nature aspect of it affects our behavior.
So if I'm a conjuice, it's not my fault.
It may or may not be your fault. We have to go take a deeper look into that to understand. So some of it we do inherit. It is passed down from one generation to the other generation. But there is a lot that is shaped by nurture. Growing up, the way we see our parents or our guardian or the significant people around us act around money. That is what we see, and that is what we learn through observational learning and modeling, because that is how a child learns. And that is how they pick up on how to behave around certain areas of our life and how to feel about certain things. So that is how nurture comes into play. And at the end of the day, the person's personal experiences that the person will have going forward around money will again shape how the person's decision making will be with money or in context to money.
Nitasha, we've spoken about the fact that, how our financial behavior shaped by nature, by nurture, how it can affect our daily behavior as well. But if I have to ask, what are the causes, what are the reasons that originates financial trauma in an individual?
Yeah, so that can be growing up in a poor household. If a person has too many challenges, struggling with basic necessities growing up, that can be a significant financial trauma for a person, which will again impact the mental well-being and subsequently every decision related to finance. Then if there has been significant loss of any asset, if the person has enough but there has been significant loss at any point of time, that can be another reason which can lead to financial trauma. Or if there is a well-to-do family but there was a separation, divorce, parents started living separately, the parent that the child is living with is not financially that well-to-do and is not able to completely support that well, that again can be financial trauma, can lead to financial trauma. Or if there is unemployment, person losing the job, the person not able to leave the job because wants to do something else but not able to leave the job because has to support certain people or his or her own lifestyle. And that pressure to keep going on with the job that person doesn't want to do can also lead to financial trauma. If income is there, but if it's not stable, 1 month you are making a lot of money, but you don't know whether you'll be making the same amount or similar amount or less or even at all the next month, that instability can also lead to financial trauma.
Nitasha, can you share a case study with us where somebody's financial trauma impacted that person's, that individual's behavioral pattern in managing finances?
There was a client that I had. Let's call her A.
Okay.
So now what happened is A was born and brought up in a very poor household. Uh, even every day's groceries was a bit of a struggle for them to manage. It was that poor, that bad for them. She got married quite early, and then the family that she got married into was quite well to do. The guy was also doing well, and with time he started doing extremely well in his career and was earning a lot of money, and they had a very extremely happy, comfortable life. And he also was a good provider, so she would get enough, and if she would ask for money, she would always get more than what she's asking for. But because she has grown up in that family where money was the main reason for stress and anxiety on everyday basis, so she never was able to be comfortable around money. Even despite having that much money, that constant anxiety of money was always there. Spending even a very small amount was a big struggle for her. As I mentioned, going to the shop and buying something for home, buying grocery, would give her kind of an anxiety episode where she would be like, okay, now I have to buy this, I have to open my purse, I have to pay this amount, because paying amount was like she was not able to detach herself from that money. She was that stressed around it, and because of that, life wasn't easy for her. Every decision was extremely difficult, something that we get away with very easily on our regular daily life was a challenge through and through for her. Then, being a female, she might want something. If she somehow managed to buy something nice for herself, that would lead to extreme guilt. So much of guilt that she would somehow bring it into a conversation and would lie about it to all the family members that my so and so person gifted it to me, or I got a very good deal and I got it for 80% off, just to relieve herself from that guilt that she has spent that much of money, which was not needed at all because nobody was questioning her. But she was not able to live with that guilt and that stress of spending money. And that struggle went on for a while because people were not paying that much attention. But when she had kids and when they started growing up, they started noticing this weird pattern. And it became a little concerning for them because it will lead to some very irrational behavior, some compulsive lying, some other kind of tendencies which was extremely not needed. And because of that, they had a talk and they felt that there was a need for some intervening, and that is when they approached me for the therapy of the client. She was also very much motivated by then to go on with the therapy, but this is how it can affect in the simplest way.
Now, Nitasha, especially in a country like India, where, from childhood we get to, get this from our parents that, you have to study hard and then you have to earn money, you have to make a living, you have to earn money. And then we even try to do that, and somebody who's managed so well in their life, despite that, they're not able to achieve their financial goals. Something is stuck there. What could be the reason behind this, and how do they get awareness about the fact that this is financial trauma?
By first of all accepting that there is something, somewhere the person is stuck, and then maybe working on himself or herself if they can, and if they need some professional help that they think will help, then they can approach a professional for that, and the professional will help them navigate their way through a better professional and financial health.
But professional help, as you say, the financial therapist, it's not very common in India like it is in the West. What is the reason behind that?
I mean, everything is there on demand basis. If there will be a demand, supply will happen. Right now, people are not that aware. How many people are looking for a financial therapist? So if people will start looking for financial therapists, more and more, people will start getting that kind of specialized professional skill, and more financial therapists will be available.
Is financial therapist equivalent to a financial advisor?
So a financial therapist is basically a person who knows why financial trauma happens, what financial trauma can do to a person, what are the dysfunctional thoughts that it can lead to, what are the cognitive errors that can arise from a financial trauma. And they know the right ways and they have the right skill to address those issues and to help the client in realizing it, working through it, and then having a more comfortable relationship with money, changing those dysfunctional thoughts into more helpful and positive thoughts, and overall getting comfortable around that topic.
So Nitasha, how does one get to know that the person is going through a financial trauma or the condition?
So it starts with awareness. First, the person has to be aware of his or her own behavior. They have to be mindful of how they are behaving whenever there is anything to do with money.
Okay.
Like if there is a huge sum of money coming in their bank account, how are they feeling about it? Are they comfortable with it? Are they getting jittery? Are they getting uncomfortable? Are they making some impulsive decision around spending that money, or are they just not comfortable spending it at all?
Okay.
Or if the portfolio is going down in the stock market, how is that person reacting to it? If there is even a small loss somewhere, how is that person taking it? Or if the person is getting bills, what is the first instant feeling that the person feels when the person gets the bill? When making the payment, is the person doing the payment immediately, or the person is doing at a very comfortable time, or intentionally delaying the payment? How is the person feeling while making the payment? Is that a comfortable feeling, or is it stressing him out too much, or is it very difficult for him to make that payment? So, or if there is any decision to be made related to money, like is the person intentionally avoiding it for as long as possible, or is the person not able to make that decision at all? I mean, that person will have to look into his or her own behavior and be aware of how they are reacting, how they are feeling, what are the thoughts going on in their head. And that is where they can start from. So that will be the first step. And then the second step is for you to accept that, okay, this is what it is. And once you have that acceptance and you're comfortable with that acceptance that, okay, this is an issue and I have to work through that, then you come to the third stage, which would be you trying to understand where it is coming from. So you have to see, is there any personal experience that I have had growing up? Did I started being uncomfortable around money after I lost that job? Or is it that I feel very anxious around money because that is how I have seen my parents behaving with money? Whenever my mother had to pay a bill, she was very uncomfortable, very anxious. Whenever we used to go and ask dad for something, he used to get extremely stressed out. Or if they had to pay the bills, that used to be the stressful hour of the day for my parents. Or is it that my parents got that behavior, inherited that behavior from some other generation, and it's something which is being handed over from generation to generation, and it has come down to you? And then, I mean, once you get to understand where it is coming from, then it's ultimately your call whether you want to break the chain, break the cycle. And of course, if you decide to break the chain, if you decide to make the change, then the next step would be identifying the dysfunctional thoughts, and then changing those dysfunctional thoughts into more helpful, more functional thoughts, and then using it, executing it, being comfortable with it, and then that is how we start developing a more comfortable relationship with money.
So, when we talk about the money matters, just the normal things, spending, saving, investing, the first thing that comes to our mind is, oh, let's speak to a financial advisor, right? But the more I'm talking to you, I think there is a need for a financial therapist as well. Do you think a financial advisor should have a holistic approach with a client with its portfolio?
Of course, that would help immensely. Because currently what I believe a financial advisor is doing is that the financial advisor is asking you what your future financial goal is. What is your starting point and where is that you want to be at? What is the goal? And then they are making a plan for you financially of what are the steps to be taken, where to go from here, and how to proceed and how to go on this journey. But the thing that they are not taking into account is the psychological aspect of it, the behavioral aspect of it, which is very much affecting that other individual's decision, his behavior around those decisions, while going through that journey that this person has already planned for him. So if there is a financial therapist, or if there is a behavioral coach, or if the person himself is equipped enough or trained enough to guide the client on those aspects, then altogether he will be helping the client in taking better decisions. So a financial aspect and the emotional aspect cannot be taken away from each other, and you cannot see at both the things in isolation. It has to be combined, it has to be integrated, so that overall plan which has been made by the financial advisor for the client, that actually becomes successful, and the person is actually able to go through that without facing any major setbacks, or without not being able to follow the steps while going on to that journey.
I quite agree with what you're saying, Nitasha, because financial advice and behavioral coaching go hand in hand. Also, there is this financial personality assessment called Money Sign by One Finance, which it's an assessment where people get to understand about their personality, about finances. We'll be dropping a link in the description box as well. But coming to money and relationship now, there's a huge correlationship between the both.
Yeah, of course.
I somewhere find I'm the guy who invests money in certain way that there should be saving at the backhand. On the other hand, my wife is somebody who likes to splurge money. There has been so many times that she has called me names called like कंजूस, you're a miser, तुम्हें पैसा खर्चना नहीं आता, and all of that. And if we see economically, the factors like these are major reasons for disturbances in the relationships with the family, with the loved ones as well. How much do you agree on this, and how much an awareness about financial trauma can make things better?
See, when two people are living together and they are taking care of a household, there are so many decisions to be made on a regular basis. Every day they have to make small decisions, big decisions. And the way they are coming to that decision is important. You have your own reasons for spending very carefully. Your wife might be having her own reasons for, splurging money. And if two people are not having the same mindset or the same reason for which they are taking the decisions, if they are varying a lot, then that can definitely affect the relationship of two individuals. And if it's to a very mind level, then of course they can work through that. But if that difference is too much, huge, then of course it can lead to relationship issues. Because you might have struggle and conflict regarding every decision, every other decision maybe. And that will affect the relationship. And
can you share a case study or an example where somebody who had come to you seeking help and the core was finances but nothing else?
Yeah, so there was a couple a while back. They came to me with initially they said that we do not see eye to eye on few things. We are not able to accept each other's decisions. We are not compatible in some ways, although we love each other a lot, but we are not compatible. And we don't know what to do about it. We want to be together, but we want to have a more easy life rather than having these conflicts and arguments every day. And that is how it started. But when we started discussing more and more, and when I started, trying to assess what's underlying these conflicts that they are having every day, money was one major reason. Money was affecting most of their decision, and money was the reason behind more or less each and every conflicts that they were having. Again, over there, in that couple, the husband was extremely careful with money and didn't like spending more than necessary. He was comfortable spending only on things which are very essential, then that they cannot do without. And wife wanted a more comfortable life with some comfort and some luxuries and everything. And that was the core reason why that conflict was there in that relationship. And that is how once we got to understand the core reason again, once that awareness was there, then they had to accept that, okay, this is where things are going wrong. And then I had to work on both of them to understand what is leading to that decisions that they are coming on to. Like if somebody is deciding this, why is very important to understand why a person is doing something that they are doing. Okay, two people can take one decision for two very different reasons. Like a person can buy a very expensive jacket because the person is not feeling good enough and is not feeling that value within himself and wants to have that jacket just to add that value to himself, because that person is struggling with self-esteem. The other person can buy that same jacket because that person just now got his check and doesn't know what to do with that money, just want to spend it on something because right now he has money and he wants to spend and he wants to have that, dopamine shot and wants to feel good about that situation. And because of that, because just to feel that high, and just because now he has money and he doesn't know whether he'll have it tomorrow or no, he wants to buy that jacket, then that is a very different why. This one is more connected to the financial trauma, but these two whys are very different. So for every client, you have to understand, for every person, you have to understand why the person is doing what he is doing. So in the same way, I had to understand why the husband was doing what he was doing, why the wife was doing what she was doing, where that disconnect was. And then again, there were so many dysfunctional thought processes, so many cognitive errors. For the husband, it was something that everything is not available to me. What I want, I may not get. I'm not worthy of this much money. I cannot spend this much money onto myself because I do not have that value that I'll put this much money onto myself and I'll spend it onto myself. So that is what he has. The wife had her own dysfunctional thoughts, her own cognitive errors. So it had to be dealt with separately, then in a combined way, and then they came to a mutual understanding where they were able to take more compatible life decisions, which was going with both their belief systems, and that is how their life got better, their marriage got better.
I was about to ask, what are they doing these days? Are they happy? But I was watching a documentary a few days back, and I want to bring in this example because a very famous poet and lyricist of India, he said that he had the biggest of struggles in his life. He used to sleep on the railway stations and the platforms and the roadsides. And now when he goes to a 5-star hotel and eats the buffet and, lives the luxury life, he said that, sometimes I feel, ye meri auqat nahi hai, I don't deserve this. Somewhere that is stuck with him. So I want to know from you, when I'm saying this, I want the answers back to back now. When I say unresolved trauma, you just clearly mentioned unresolved traumas can lead to unhealthy relationships, can lead to difficult decision making also.
Yes, that will affect decision making. That will affect the judgment of the person. Okay, be it any kind of trauma. So we are talking in context of financial trauma. So if a person if the person had financial trauma at some point of time, and if it's still, he's carrying that burden with him, and that is getting manifested in some or the other way, then of course it's going to affect that person's decision making, overall judgment. The person might take very impulsive decision. The person might be very careful about not taking any risk at all, which because of which he might miss out on very good opportunities, might be very reckless, might be very compulsive in taking decisions, and might take very wrong decisions, and might face big losses in his life related to finance. So that judgment is very much affected, and that decision making is very much affected.
Nitasha, how can financial trauma impact somebody's career choices or earning potential?
If a person is having any kind of financial trauma, and if that is impacting his future goals, like whatever, he has this constant pressure to make money, and if instead of going for what he wants to do in life, what is something that would make him happy in his career choice, or what other kind of profession that actually he wants to pursue, rather than going for that, if the main reason for choosing a profession is money, because the person wants to make money, because he has always seen a scarcity of it, or wants to make enough so that he wouldn't have to face any kind of scarcity there, then the person might get overwhelmed, and the judgment might get clouded, and the person may not take the decision for the right reasons, and might end up taking maybe not the fairest decision possible, and end up choosing the wrong career.
And how does it affect somebody's earning potential?
If you are not in the right career, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, you will never be your best at it. So that is one thing. Other than that, if a person is has gone through financial trauma and is under that constant pressure around money, and if in the workplace also, because that workplace is giving that person that money, is the provider force, the source, then everything around that workplace will always have that air of anxiety for that person. Like while working, that constant anxiety will be there at the back of the head. The person will never be completely at ease in the workplace. Every decision, whether related to the work or related to the job, if the person is making, will always have that anxiety at least playing some part in that decision. So that decision will not be taken for the right reasons, and would not be, may not be the best decision. Even the time management, the decision making skill, the overall judgment will be so much impacted that the person may not be able to give the best, his best, and that will impact the person's growth in the work environment, his career.
Nitasha, economic factors, I believe, are one of the most prominent reasons for somebody's mental well-being, right? Now, what are the links do you find between financial trauma and other mental issues like depression or anxiety?
Again, yeah, it's a very clear connection. Like any trauma would have that impact, but definitely financial trauma, because finance is something very crucial, very important. Like our self-esteem, our self-acceptance, our overall, our standing in the world is very much affected by how much money we have and how much money we make. So finance is financial trauma somewhere plays a very important role when it comes to overall mental health, mental well-being, and other psychological disorders. And there have been couple of studies also done in this area, and there has been clear connection. Like even if we talk in terms of recovery, like if there is a comparison between two groups, one having depression and one having depression with financial trauma, the recovery of the person who has depression with financial trauma would be, say, if I remember it correctly, it's like 4.2 times less. The recovery rate would be 4.2 times less than the person who doesn't have financial trauma. behind that or along with that depression. Even suicide rate is like 3 times more for people who have financial trauma with depression or along with other psychological disorders. And there are so many cases of addiction, excessive anxiety, and panic attacks, which has been clearly associated with financial trauma.
So for overall mental health, financial well-being is very important. Now, lastly, Nitasha, how can one build a healthy relationship with money?
By focusing on overall financial well-being rather than just focusing on the financial goal. It's important for a person to, look at it in a holistic manner, to first understand where that person is at and where that person wants to be, and then plan everything around that. And it will be very much helpful if they can seek some professional help by having a financial advisor, and along with that, not only stopping at that, along with that, having a behavioral coach or a financial therapist who can also take care of the behavioral and the emotional aspect related to the financial goal of the individual. And then, having a step-by-step understanding of how to proceed, breaking down those steps into more doable sub-steps so that the whole journey becomes stress-free for the person, because it's very important that you do not stay under that constant pressure and stress, because you're creating another trauma for yourself if you're going through that stress throughout the journey. So that journey has to be stress-free, and for that you have to plan things better. So that you can attain that financial well-being right now. You can be at peace with your financial state as it is now, and that you can attain only when you plan it well and when you have proper help and proper guidance to go through with it.
On that note, thank you so much for doing this, Nitasha. As I said in the podcast as well, the topic of conversation was very needed. It was very timely. I learned a lot from this conversation today. It was a great conversation. But if I have to point out some key takeaways, number one, financial planning should not be looked into isolation. Behavioral assessment is also very much essential. Number two, financial well-being can be accomplished now as you chase your financial goals. It should not be stressful. And lastly, if you are understanding that you are going through a financial trauma, seek support. There is no harm in acknowledging this. There is no harm in addressing this. This was an interesting episode of Temperament Season 2. We'll see you in the next episode. Do drop in the comments, what did you learn from this session? Also, please like the video, share the video, and do subscribe to Personal Finance TV.